Okay, my apologies if I speak a little bit too loud. You know, as you know, I have to you know, at least talk a little bit over, so you know my voice won't be drowned out by, you know, so my voice won't be drowned out. So okay, so yeah, it's like I've been waiting for the perfect time, but yeah, so I've been trying to wait for the perfect time to talk about Logan Paul and him coming together with WWE to, you know, so they can come together on a deal, and he can be involved, and they, you know, whichever it looks like. So this happened like a week ago. So yeah, and this is basically my whole thoughts on the whole ordeal with Logan Paul end up being in WWE. And here's why. Like, I saw, like I'm looking at now, like Vince Russo is being mocked, and people are making fun of him for suggesting the fact that, you know, he should dethrone Roman Reigns. Obviously, I'm not behind that, but I'm not advocating for that to actually happen, because that's that is a stupid decision. That's a decision that's not really smart right there too. But I feel like I feel like he does have somewhat of a point. Like Roman doesn't even, like, by this time too, like that the double titles has run its course too. So I definitely feel like Logan Paul, well, first, like he would definitely benefit with that title, with the WWE title, and then you can have Roman Reigns keep the Universal title. You know, people, this is why I completely, you know, I can't help myself when I just uncontrollably laugh, because people don't understand, especially you know, the biggest midget marks in history, like JD, for example. Like, when they think they want to get into business, and they think they automatically understand how wrestling works. Like, here's the thing, and which is why that, you know, the indie market is just plaguing and breaking down wrestling as a whole, or you could say mainstream wrestling. What worked before, which is what, you know, why we're even infatuated and have, you know, obsessed love with wrestling in the first place. Wrestling was, that's why I had to understand and grow up off the fact, and, you know, get out of the childlike phase. Wrestling is not a sport. It never has been, and it never will be. That was not the intention for it. As far as the WWE, which is why I understand that, I understood that term and that concept, that wrestling is not a sport. Wrestling is not a sport. It never was. You know, it was, especially when you had names like Stone Cold and their antics and what they did. You know, Stone Cold, Shawn Michaels, Undertaker, The Rock, and, you know, Bret the Hart family. Like, they were all about characters, which is why, you know, the 80s, and you have the 90s where they were so vintage and ruthless, and you had the 80s were all about, you know, so that's where all about cartoonish characters. Here's a big question that I want to ask y'all. When is the last time that or wrestling in general, or WWE, when is the last time that wrestling has been a big deal? When was the last time that you've seen in the headlines? When was the last time that you've seen WWE or wrestling has been a part of, you know, pop? It's a part of pop culture, but when's the last time that you saw wrestling has been mainstream? Like, when's the last time? I'm gonna sit back and let one of y'all answer that for me. Like, be honestly, like, when's the last time that you've seen, like, obviously you have Sasha and you have Becky and Charlotte, like, they're very popular individuals and wrestlers, but they're not known, they're not like a Rock and Austin nowadays, like, where you have, like, where they've entered that, you know, a part of entertainment, and where they can be, like, where everybody knows them when it's not that ordeal. Like, there hasn't been a time where like today, where wrestling has been mainstream, or it has been, you know, really a part where everybody's looking at it. And wrestling they have been struggling. Like, the last megastar has been John Cena, and he's been on his way out. So, you know, this could be like, it's judging off the fact of how people hate. Also, like, imagine if how much beneficial that it would be for wrestling to go back to being mainstream. As much as it would, like, imagine that if you would have someone like Pokimane or Amarath, because that's what it's the big thing about. You have where everybody wants to be popular and they want to be a part of pop culture. Like, imagine that, where you have someone like Amarath or Pokimane or, yeah, like Logan Paul. Or, you know, LTG. Like, imagine like they being a part of WWE, and it's where like they have like people that like that's another thing also. Like, there's nobody that a part of, because they understood too. That's why, it's just why he's being signed. Like, he did really good, and he understands the business, and he understands being a character. You know, he's more over with the audience than the wrestlers. Like, how does that work? How do you do that? Like, how do you have someone that has never touched the ring, never been a part, has never been in a wrestling ring or around it, that's never studied it? They've watched it obviously, but they've never been a part of it. Like, how do they do it better than the wrestlers? It's because wrestlers, they're so obsessed with that whole of being, which was what happened with Big E. And they're so obsessed with having these like matches that they want to look at, and they want to be a martyr and going down for being that remembered. Like, nobody cares about that. People care about characters. You can say what you want to say, but like, all of us care about characters. That's why I continue to say, and I'm gonna keep saying that until the end of time. People care about characters and where their stories intertwine at. And that's what as wrestling has always been about. That's why WWE has been as big as it has. It's because, or you know, or hasn't been for the last decade. And you see that even within, you know, because Roman Reigns he's a favorite now, but he always hasn't been a very popular favorite. He's always been a polar opposite, whether people hate him or they don't like him at all. That's those two sides. And then obviously you have, you know, his a little bit of community that likes him. Like, not to say I'm that, or, you know, people will try to turn it as it is, but yeah, not to say that I like him and that he's one of the best things going right now. But let's be honest, he doesn't have, especially people like Randy Orton and Brock Lesnar, which is why that worked for so long. You know, those guys also, they're not a draw anymore. And WWE is a little bit starting to see that, which is why they have pieces in place. They're starting to have pieces in place, and which is why they had to sign in with Logan Paul. You know, wrestlers like Brock Lesnar and Randy Orton, and then you have wrestlers like that. They have been popular, like Roman Reigns a bit. But yeah, they're running out of power. They're running out of steam, and they're running out of. They're not a draw like they used to be. So. And if you want to be like to be a part of pop culture, to be a part of the mainstream again, like I'm glad that they're doing this also, because this is going to bring in a lot of audience. Do you actually believe? Think about it. If you actually think, imagine if they didn't push the women's wrestling, as much as that, you know, PC and feministic that was. Imagine if they didn't push the women's division as they did today. Imagine if they didn't explore other opportunities and they just relied on John Cena to take it all. Do you imagine what could have possibly happened if they didn't even invest in Roman Reigns also? Yep, they would be that much of a bigger hole in which they already are in. So I'm glad that they're exploring these opportunities with, you know, stuff such as like this. Because it's going to probably take time, but at least for it to be somewhat entertaining. Because I'm not saying that, I don't know, it could be if they actually still understand, but if they smarten up in doing what they're doing with Logan Paul, like someone like because they desperately need it. You need to be, because the thing now is Logan Paul, and you know, when you talk about how stars move now and how they interact. Imagine if WWE had someone like a Millie Bobby Brown, because Stranger Things, that's one of the biggest popular things right now. That's what everybody is talking about right now. That's what a little girl or a boy looks up to now, is whether you want to talk about Stranger Things or whether you want to talk about YouTube and Twitch. That's the big thing now. nowadays. So WB is definitely benefiting off this, because people like, that's why I said people don't understand when you take it into context, and when you really understand about it, when you want to look at what is the popular thing nowadays. I mean, you had in the 90s, which was popular, which you had rock, and you had kind of hip hop, and that was, you know, what people really, or whether it was horror, like, you know, horror films and anything like that. If you want to look at that Coast Cottage side of things, and you take it to the 2000s, where hip hop was at its biggest it could have been, you know, Eminem and 50 Cent and Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg, and then now you have where everybody is obsessed with Twitch and YouTube and stuff like that. So, you know, so-called being an influencer, and that's where WWE could definitely benefit. Like, I hope they push this thing and they really start to explore opportunities where you definitely need someone like Logan Paul or a Pokimane, and that would definitely benefit, because you would have a lot more eyes watching wrestling. So yeah, that's what I had to say. And also another thing, because I forgot to say, because yeah, I could be just kind of scrambled, but like, if you already watched, or if you're starting to watch that video I just dropped on Doja Cat, yeah, make sure, because we definitely need to get the likes and much exposure on that as possible, because we definitely need to expose what type of individual, and, you know, just what type of character that Doja Cat is and what she carries with herself. Because yeah, this is what people look up to, and that's where, you know, she's one of those people that profit and benefit off of, yeah, off the name of black people. So you definitely need to get as much exposure on that as possible. And yeah, that's everything I have on that. And yeah, WWE would definitely benefit with this. I'm gonna put that in the at the end too, the description. And yeah, that's all I had to say. WWE definitely benefit off of this, and hopefully in the future. So I'll see y'all out later, my cosmic brethren. I love y'all for the much recent support. Thank you too. Very grateful, very grateful, very grateful. Never thought I'd be this far. Thank you.